Hello and welcome back to this week's Breaking Bourbon News. Now, if this is your first time tuning into this particular program, what we do here is we pick a random bourbon off our shelf. Marissa picks it for us. We do this blind. We try to guess what bourbon she picked. Now, tonight, she was a little bit tired. She was in her PJs already. She's 8.5 months pregnant, so we didn't put her on camera per her wishes, but you'll have to believe me that she put it under here. I do not know what it is, and I only have what's in my glass here. So we're going to do this Breaking Bourbon News up first, but everybody knows before we get started on that, time for the traditional sip. That's smooth. That's right, today's Breaking Bourbon News comes out of Buffalo Trace Distillery, where they announced they will not be releasing the 2021 George T. Stagg collection. When Drew Mayville, the master blender at Buffalo Trace, was asked about this, he said it just didn't look right. He goes on to say, and I quote, "It didn't match the taste profiles we expected from Stagg." Now, as you know, this started in 2006. That's when they put the whiskeys in the barrels to be aged for George T. Stagg. And in 2021, they released them, tasted them, and decided they did not like this. A spokeswoman for Buffalo Trace said, holding back on the Stagg release would cost the company millions of dollars in lost sales. Now, I reached out to my own friend, a taster on the Buffalo Trace panel for 6 years, and I said, "Did you hear about George T. Stagg?" In which he replied, and I quote, "A sad day in the bourbon world." I then went on to ask him, what will they do with all of these barrels? Obviously not throw them down the drain, and he said, and I quote again, "It can fit into several product molds if the flavor is right. You can always have an older 10-year bourbon. They could also hold out a few more years, and it could become an ER antique." Now, Mayville described the taste profile on this as dark chocolate, leather, and dark cherries. He said that it aged slightly from year to year, so the 2006 whiskey was underdeveloped in character to represent the Stagg brand. It usually is extremely hearty. The company has yet to identify the root cause of this problem. So basically what we have here is a George T. Stagg that is not being released by Buffalo Trace because it did not live up to the quality and standards that George T. Stagg should. Now we're going to take another sip of this because I want to keep tasting this so we can get into our flavor profile on this and see if we can identify what we're drinking here that Marissa picked for us. But I'm going to give my 2 cents on this as we go. I also want to give you an update on the Heaven Hill debauchery. That is absolutely fantastic. I like that a lot. Now, my 2 cents on this is a great thing that Buffalo Trace is doing, because it shows you in a time when bourbon can be put out and millions of dollars can be made, that it's not just being put out to be put out. So they obviously hold George T. Stagg to a specific standard. I've never tried it myself, but I do know that, say this was the first time that I tried it and I knew that 20 people on the Buffalo Trace tasting panel said this isn't good enough, but they put it out anyway, that I would be upset knowing that was the first time I got to try George T. Stagg. They know that if they put every single one of these bottles out, they would sell every single one of these bottles. You also know that it would sell in the secondary for 3, 4, 5, 6 times MSRP, because that's just the way George T. Stagg goes. So for me, yes, I'm upset. Not really at the same time. I probably wouldn't have gotten one. In Pennsylvania, it's an online lottery system to win one of these. I haven't won one yet, so I'm not thinking that I'm going to win one anyway. Do I think I would ever find it at MSRP outside of winning it in a lottery? No, I don't. So for me to get my hands on a George T. Stagg, I would have to probably, 1, try it at a whiskey bar, 2, know somebody within the whiskey community that I have a relationship with, a friendship with, to get a sample from them and try it, or 3, I don't even know how else I would get my hands on it. So I'm upset that I'm not going to get another chance, because that's just another however many bottles they put out that I'm not going to get an opportunity to get my hands on. And 2, it'll probably raise the cost secondary of any previous bottles. So any 2020 release is going to now double in price if it hasn't been bought yet, because you can't get it now for another year. They also said that they were thinking about putting out a 2007 barrel selection, but they just didn't want to do that because, again, there's kind of like this tradition that goes with the aging process and everything like that. So it just seems like Buffalo Trace is being held to a higher standard, which it always has, right? It's always one of those things that people can hate on Buffalo Trace all they want, but they put out some of the best products in the bourbon world for a reason, and the demand for them is that high for a reason. Now, are they playing games to make that demand? I don't think so. I think the bourbon boom blew up, and they weren't ready for it, and now they're starting to become ready for it with this whole expansion product that they have going on. So that's my 2 cents on it. Good for you, Buffalo Trace, for not putting out a half-ass product just to try to make a little bit of money and line your pockets in a time that we all know that you could. Now let's take it 180 and go back to Heaven Hill. We did our last breaking bourbon news on Heaven Hill Distillery, and they're still on strike. Now the worst part about this is some of the people that are on strike, they can't afford to be on strike for a month. This is a lot of money that they're losing. There are a lot of people reaching out saying, listen, I'm looking at my bank account every time I buy groceries. I have children or a husband or myself who needs medication, and I'm starting to pay out of pocket for these things because Heaven Hill is not coming to the table and meeting the demands that the union wants, which is only fair to them to be treated and paid and respected the way that everybody else at all these other major distilleries are. So Heaven Hill is the shining example of what not to do in the bourbon industry at this particular juncture, while Buffalo Trace seems to be putting out a statement saying, we're not just going to put out half-ass product because we know we can make money. We have enough money. We want to make sure you get good whiskey. So right now we have polar opposites when it comes to the bourbon spectrum, and that's that. That's where I'm going to leave it on our bourbon breaking news. Let's get into this and see if we can figure out what it is. Now, I mentioned to you that Marissa did pick this out. She's 8.5 months pregnant. She was in her pajamas. I made her do this because it's breaking bourbon news. I had to do it. We had to get it out there. I can't wait. So she didn't want to be on camera. So you're just going to have to trust me that she wrote it down. I'll show you her handwriting under this. And right here we have a bourbon that I don't know what it is. We have, 80, 90 bourbons behind me on the shelf. It had to be anything on the shelf, unopened. Or sorry, that was opened. Can't do anything unopened. I have 3 shelves. You can probably only see 2 right now. But this tastes like a lower proof bourbon. I don't want to say it's a low proof. It's definitely not like an 80 proof or anything like that because it does have a kick. But I think the kick is more of a rye kick or a spice or something like that than anything else. Now, this is your generic bourbon flavors, which is kind of crazy because I don't have a lot of stuff that isn't generic bourbon flavors. A lot of the original stuff that I bought when I got into the bourbon world is just your generic vanilla, caramel, oak. There's a little bit more oak on this, which makes me think it has maybe a little bit of age behind it, but it's not like super oaky, and it's a little bit thin, although the flavor profile is fantastic. I love the taste of it. I love the flavors that go into this, but it's a low, I think it's probably like in the 90 to 95 range, if I had to guess. And I'm usually terrible with proof. And the trick is to have a drink of something that you know before you go into a blind. So if you go into a blind, pick something off your shelf that's 80 proof or 90 proof, then go into your blind. Because if this was my first sip of alcohol for the night, then I might be like, well, it could be 100 proof, could be 80 proof, you know? Get your mind set on what the proof should be and then go in with that. So I'm thinking this is in that 90 to 95 proof. We're going to find out here though. Again, very generic taste profile. Feels like it has a little bit of a rye kick to it. Not too sure. My first thoughts were like a Penelope, but I have the Penelope barrel strength, and it's definitely not that. And then I only have the Penelope 4 grain, which is a 80 proof, and it's definitely not 80 proof. So I'm kind of curious. It tastes like, so like MGP is a sourced bourbon. Everybody sources from MGP. Just that generic, very everyday flavor profile is what makes me think MGP, which is why I thought Penelope at first. But I don't think this is 115, and I don't think this is 80 proof, so it's definitely not Penelope. And I have a guess because I was looking at my shelf before I got on camera, and I was thinking, what's up there? What flavor profiles do I know? And I was thinking Bell Mead. So I have the Bell Mead original. I believe it's 91 proof, 92 proof, something like that. This is 90.4 proof. So right in that range, that 90 to 95 proof range. I'm not sure. This is a straight bourbon whiskey. It's a sour mash. 4 barrels per batch, ranging in age, all that kinds of stuff. So Nelson Greenbrier, it kind of feels like something like this, like a Bell Mead to me. But I'm not too positive on that. There's only one way to find out. Let's take one more sip before we get one more guess. Maybe we'll try and see if there's anything else up there that we think it is. Oh, by the way, one person gives a thumbs down on these barrels from the tasting panel. It's got to be aged. They don't touch it. They age it longer to see what it's going to become. So it's kind of crazy to me. I think they have like 20 or 25 people or something like that on the tasting panel. Don't quote me on that. But if one taster gives it a thumbs down, they don't pick it. That's quality control right there. Because you could have 20 people tasting these George T. Staggs, and one dude's just like, nah. And everybody else is like, come on, it's not that bad. And one dude could just be like, nope. Controls the whole thing. Millions of dollars lost because one guy doesn't like it. Now, if he doesn't like everything, then maybe I don't know how long he'll be on the panel. But I'm going with Belle Meade. Wilderness Trail? No. Definitely not Jefferson's. This is in my mind for some reason. 90 to 95 proof. Very traditional bourbon flavors. Pretty good. A little thin, but still the flavors make up for it. Tastes like a younger bourbon, so this is definitely a younger bourbon, although it says ranging in age from 6 to 8 years. So maybe this isn't it. I'm just going to go with it because I don't want to waste your time anymore. Let's check this out. And the winner is Widow Jane 10 year. So we had Widow Jane 10 year picked. That's a 90 proof bourbon, right? 91 proof. So this is undisclosed mash bill, I'm pretty sure. Undisclosed mash bill, undisclosed, it's this distilled for them. So somebody distills this and it's undisclosed, which again makes me believe possibly MGP, although I don't know if that's confirmed or not. Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana bourbon bottled by Widow Jane. Okay, so maybe not MGP, but you get the point. This comes out of New York, quote unquote, the limestone mineral water of New York. This is a fantastic bottle. The only thing that I don't love about this bottle is the price tag. $70 is a lot to pay. So I got it wrong. We're 0 for 2 when it comes to these breaking bourbon news blind picks, but I feel like we're getting closer, right? This was 91 proof. This is 90.4 proof, so at least we got that right. The flavor profiles are probably a little bit different, but we're guessing blind here. So that's going to be it for this week. Make sure you click that like. Make sure you click that subscribe. Don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly. Stay healthy. Stay happy. Stay drinking. And that's it, right? Follow me on Instagram. Bourbon of the Week. We're going to leave it there. Buffalo Trace, keep doing your thing. Heaven Hill, get your shit together. Sorry for cursing. Cheers, y'all. See you next week.